theatre, film, TV and more. Suzy Wrong reviews it all on Joy Drive.
Hello, Suzy Wrong.
Do you believe in ghosts, Warren?
That's a hard question. The scientific side says no, but the spiritual side says yes. How's that for an answer?
Says yes as in they must exist? They must be around? Is that what you're thinking?
I don't know if it's ghosts itself, or am I thinking more of the concept of energy exists. So I don't know if you're necessarily going to see anything beyond me putting a sheet over my head with two eyes cut out. But in terms of ghosts, like I wouldn't expect to see one around the corner and that it goes boo. But I don't know, maybe we exist as energies. I don't know. What do you reckon? Like we could be particles vibrating at certain frequencies.
I've seen two, you know.
Have you?
Twice. Once in a hospital.
Oh, really?
Once in a hospital and once in a hotel.
What did they say?
They didn't say anything. Like I didn't know until I kind of like went past them. Yeah, it's really hard to describe. Like it's not like they're going boo at you. It's just the one at the hospital. It was like this, like a white sheet sort of creature, but it was in a completely dark space. There's no light source there. Oh. And then I was in the back of my parents' car and it drove down, and then when it turned and the car's headlights had moved away and it was completely dark in this corner, and there was just this white figure there just standing there. It wasn't being scary or anything.
Was it the same as the hospital one?
No, the hospital was years later. I was a real grown woman by then. I had gone out partying with friends. I wasn't living in Sydney at the time, so we had a hotel with my partner in Sydney, kind of old, slightly run down hotel. And we went partying, and I was tired. I came back to the hotel first. I went to sleep, and then when my partner came back, he sat on the edge of my bed, and I'm like, "What are you doing? Go back to sleep." And he said, "No, I'm just looking at you." And next morning he said, no such thing happened. I came back and went straight to bed.
Oh my goodness. So there was a ghost in the room.
There was in a very creepy hotel. Like, nobody was surprised when I said something weird happened there. But, you know, my experience tells me that, whether you believe that they exist or not, in my case, obviously, I feel like I believe maybe 80%. I feel like I definitely see them. They're not there to kind of harm you, because if they're able to do any harm, you know, all kinds of things would be happening. Like people would be dropping for no reason all over the shop. I would imagine. I think I just kind of like
flying in the kitchen, you know, that sort of thing.
Yeah, those things happen so rarely. Like we hear about that like once in 20 years or something. But you know, maybe they are just like what you say. They're just sort of energy, and then maybe we can think that they're observing us or something. You know, sometimes you watch these like afterlife TV shows. They sort of exist. I like to believe that they exist, and that brings us to today's movie.
I've got one ghost story though. Before you do, it's like they're a presence. I do remember I was lying in bed, and this is quite a familiar story. I believe lots of people have. I was lying in bed, but I was awake. Well, I think I was awake, but I was paralysed. I couldn't move, and these two ghost-like creatures were at the end of the bed looking at me. And I was and my partner at the time was asleep, and I'm trying to say ghost, and I couldn't talk properly, and it must have come out. And he just woke up in a big fright and looked and said, "There's no one there," but they disappeared. But they were standing there at the end of the bed, and I couldn't do anything about it, even though I was looking at them.
And you forgot about that until now.
About that. Yeah, I remember. They were standing in the room, and afterwards he made me get. This is the one that I spoke to you about last time, and I said he'd said the aliens are here to save us. He made me get sage, and I had to burn it throughout my house to get rid of these ghosts. And I also had to do something with salt. I think I had to burn a candle with salt or something, and I did it the wrong way. And apparently, I sucked in all the ghosts from all the good ones too. I did it wrong. So I suck them
Look,
all
in
in.
any case, I think saging your home is a good thing to do, even just as a ritual for yourself. Yeah, I think just as for yourself, like a ritual. But as you're doing it, it's almost like you have to go through some kind of meditation, some kind of thought process. And I think that's useful to think like, oh, what is it that I'm trying to cleanse in my home? What is it that I'm trying to figure out? Even if you don't believe in the supernatural side of it, I think it's a nice thing to do.
Definitely. I might do it this weekend. I've still got a little bit left over. Great. So, Suzy, we are talking about what this week? It's a movie.
Adam is trying to write a screenplay, but writer's block has hit him hard. Almost instinctively, he decides to travel back to his childhood home, hoping to find resolution for whatever is bothering him in psychological and emotional terms. In addition to currently being screened in every city, this week's movie, All of Us Strangers, is a highlight of this year's Mardi Gras Film Festival currently taking place in Sydney. Although missing out on the Oscars, All of Us Strangers has been nominated for virtually every major film award in the US, the UK, and even over here in Australia. Not just critics, but moviegoers everywhere are responding overwhelmingly favorably as well, and it is easy to see why. The film packs an emotional punch dealing with heartbreak, loss, and trauma. From the moment it begins, viewers are submerged in a deep melancholy. There is something very sad about Adam, even if he isn't completely aware of it, just trying to get on with the normalcy of everyday life. That is until something extraordinary happens when his late parents appear for a series of reunifications that will change Adam forever. Simultaneously, Adam is beginning to fall in love with his neighbor Harry. So maybe, by the film's end, things will finally turn rosy for our protagonist. I think All of Us Strangers is beautifully made, very authentic and sensitive. And even though it contains some sensational twists and turns, nothing ever feels superfluous or forced. People I have spoken with have a stronger reaction to the sentimentality of the piece. I think my relationship with death is probably slightly unusual, having had many years to come to terms with my mother's passing. I don't see death as a sad thing necessarily, so a lot of what the film tries to do doesn't move me quite as much, but I certainly understand how it would affect most people. Warren, you don't like it when I said homework that's too frivolous or shallow, so this meaty one's definitely not wasting anybody's time today.
Oh, Suzy, this was really meaty. I loved it. I love this movie. I want to see it again. I really do. I can't wait to see it again. I thought the cast was absolutely amazing, but the emotional impact, Suzy, from I don't know, it just got me from the beginning. I cried so much through it. It was amazing. I loved it. Imagine being able to go back and talk to the people that are no longer here and say what we wanted to say to them and get that closure. It was just so emotional. I loved it, Suzy. I thought great movie, great choice. It also, something else I thought it dealt with really well was that power of being able to have the opportunity to come out to your parents. And I know a lot of people don't necessarily have that opportunity, and we see that happen in this movie, and how powerful it is to get that feeling of acceptance and, it's okay. And whilst we don't necessarily get it initially in this movie, it does come by the end of it, and it's such a beautiful thing to experience, and to be able to go back and get that if you have had that opportunity cut off in your life is just amazing. Did you cry, Suzy?
I didn't. I watched it twice. I think I was slightly more involved the second time. I find that a lot of the film depends on your relationship with death. And I think because my mother died such a long time ago, I've had, almost 30 years of having to deal with it. So I think maybe I'm a little bit more numb to that. I've had a lot of time to really process that. But I imagine most people don't really are able to process that. Are both your parents still around?
Yes, they are both still around. It's really interesting because I was at my parents' house on the weekend, and they're still in the family home, and they're in their 80s. And it was sad. Mum had a stroke on Christmas Day, which was really, really sad. So it slowed her right down. But it's challenging because she won't accept any help at all, and I've noticed the house is starting to get a little bit not dirty is the wrong word, but untidy, and it's not something that they would have tolerated at all, certainly up until now. And so I, in my ingenious nature, went and got a robotic vacuum and took it out there. And I said, "You're going to have it. I don't care, because you can't. You don't want to get a cleaner. You won't accept help, and the place needs cleaning anyway." I was out there on Saturday and trying to get the thing set up, and of course there's the usual challenges of Wi-Fi and passwords and things like that. And with anyone who is elderly and a bit slow, it's frustrating. You think, oh my goodness, what is it? But then I looked around and I thought, Warren, take a look at this. You've got your mum, your dad there. I've got my dog, who's also similar age, and very soon I'll be sitting there without any of them. They'll all be gone, and it's not that far away. And it just hit me, and it just thought, wow, that scares the hell out of me. There's nothing I can necessarily do about it. But I'm lucky in a way, and I'll tie this in with the movie, is, my relationship with my dad was awful when it came to me being a bit different as a kid and not being your typical son. And now I've got a good relationship with him, and watching All of Us Strangers, it made me sort of feel very fortunate that despite being, I suppose, eventually I'll be truly alone because I don't have any family. My brother's no longer here as well. I'm fortunate because I've resolved my relationships. Yet in the movie, in reality, he doesn't get to resolve them, does he? Because he's talking to them and they're no longer there. So my parents are still here, but not for much longer, unfortunately.
I think that's why it's so powerful for you, because I'm watching that film thinking that most people, will be watching it fearing the inevitable. And that's a really powerful thing because it's so inevitable. And especially if you're slightly, if you're middle-aged like us, that it's going to happen very soon. So in that way, it's a really emotional ride. I think it's a really, really beautifully made movie. It's extremely sensitive, and there's some really magical things about it. The way the mood of it is so intense, and you kind of don't really understand why it sucks you in so easily, because it doesn't have a lot of story. It doesn't have a lot of dialogue. No. Maybe it is about the atmosphere that just kind of gets you right on the exact frequency that it wants you to be at, and then you become really receptive to all the quite wild things that it says in its narrative. So in that way, I think it's a really fantastically made film. I'm very happy that it's a queer film. That's some queer artists making a queer film of this level. It's incredibly sophisticated and very clever, and I'm glad that people are loving a film that happens to be a queer film.
It's brilliant. Suzy, if you did, and you don't have to answer this if it's too personal, but if you had the opportunity to go back and talk to your mother, what do you think you would talk about?
We had the coming out discussion, not the trans one, but at that time the queer one, because I had very very outrageously made I was living with my mother at the time, just the two of us in a 3-bedroom unit, and I had very outrageously made my boyfriend at that time almost live with us. He was living with us like half the week without kind of having any kind of explanation. And then they got on like a house on fire. They have very compatible personalities. They love each other so much. But one day my mother, was a drinker and a smoker, which is why she died young. She had this, drunken confrontation with me about do you have something to explain to me about? and she was trying to put on like a really angry mother face, which I guess in a way she probably was, thinking that I was a little bit kind of disrespectful of her space. And all I said was a very simple line, obviously I was emotional about it. It came out of nowhere. I said, "Do you think I have a choice?" And it was literally a very, very short sentence like that. And I could see everything change in her face, and it never came up again. And everything was really, really good. Like she loved my ex, and, her love for me never changed, and it was never a problem. So fortunately, we didn't have that sort of drama over there. Maybe that's why partially why the film didn't affect me quite as much.
You've reached closure with that relationship, but I imagine for those who haven't, it would definitely trigger some strong emotions. Suzy, I'm also proud to report that my mum absolutely loves the robot vacuum.
Does it mop? I hear that some of them mop.
Both.
Oh my God, incredible.
It does both. I love the movie. I think it's brilliant. I'd encourage everyone to see it. A few messages came in from Michael. All of Us Strangers is a beautiful movie. Great performances from Andrew Scott and Paul Mescal. Only problem, made me cry. See, Michael, you're not the only one. It made me as well. David from Fitzroy says, a huge Andrew Hay fan, but such a horribly self-conscious script and performances, and a truly vile retro foregrounding of the gay men are destined to be lonely trope. Yes, 2 thumbs down, all around failure. There, we've got a whole spectrum of comments there. And of course, we've got another one saying, where is it streaming? You have to see it go and see it in the movies, I think, at the moment.
Yeah, it's still at the cinemas everywhere. It will come to streaming eventually, but it'd be good to support queer filmmakers, spend a few dollars to support the industry.
Yeah, I agree. Go see it. It is such a good film. All of Us Strangers. Suzy Wrong. What is our homework for next week? Is it as good?
From this weekend, the Mardi Gras Film Festival is going online and accessible anywhere in Australia via their website queerscreen.org.au. One of my favorite films in the streaming program is a title from Nigeria. Check out All the Colors of the World Are Between Black and White. Let's catch up on that when I see you next Tuesday.
Thank you. Thanks. That is Suzy Wrong. We're going to take it out with one of the tracks from the movie. It is The Power of Love. Frankie Goes to Hollywood. You're on Joy Drive. News headlines next.
Keep the vampire.